Hey, this is Tiqqle, and in this video we're going over my macros and my keybinds. For Elemental, I'll have a different video for Enhance and Resto. Look down in the description, they'll eventually be there. And I want to thank you guys so much for the love on the stream every day, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You guys have been absolutely insane getting ready for that Shadowlands. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. I'm going to be showing you what my keybinds are to the T. I'm going to be showing you what all my macros are. Elemental Shaman is a little bit more complicated because there are some pet control macros that are pretty critical for PvP and even for PvE. So let's just jump into it right away. Number one, my normal keybinds, I'm using F1, 2, 3. Flame Shock is being F1. Chain Harvest or another Covenant ability being F2. This is where I was putting Sky Fury and for PvP, but I've kind of changed that up a little bit. F3 is being my Fire or Storm Elemental. That is something that might be up more and more given that might be taking Surge of Power more often. Next up is my main row of keys, my main abilities, my main damaging abilities. I also have Wind Shear on the button next to the 1 as a quick and easy way to get those shears off. Earthshock is on my 1 keybind, that's our spender. Lightning Bolt, Chain Lightning, Lava Burst are my 2, 3, 4. Stormkeeper is my 1 minute cooldown on my 5 key, and then Echoing Shock or another ability that augments or changes the gameplay, or even a cooldown will go here. For example, if I'm not going Echoing Shock, I could put Ice Fury here or Elemental Blast. Something like that is not like a core LE piece, it's based off of your talents. So this is what I would put into this slot. Next up, my Q, my E, my T, my quick buttons are all around my W. I use Ghost Wolf, Purge, Thunderstorm. And then after this, going over the next row of keys, Caps Lock is a focus Wind Shear, which is a macro we'll get into later. This is actually something I use in PvE and PvP. Usually in PvE, I will set focuses quite often so I can get easy kicks or Wind Shears onto casting mobs in a particular mob pack. S is for Frost Shock. Yes, I have unkeybound backpedal. So that is actually my potentially spammable Frost Shock, which is a pretty good keybind in PvP because you need to be using that quite often. F is Healing Surge. This is something that for an Elemental Shaman, your heals are pretty strong, and that's where I put that keybind. G is my Lightning Surge Totem, which is on a macro, so that it's an @cursor macro. So we will get into that pretty soon. Pretty much every LE is using Lightning Lasso, of course. It's so strong. I put that on the C keybind, very easy to access, and then Hex on V. If I'm PvEing though, I'll usually replace the keys that I'm using for, Sky Fury or Lightning Lasso with PvE potions or consumables. The only other thing I'll mention, and I didn't really point it out here, is I use W as walk forward, obviously, but A and D are strafe. I do not have anything that turns my character other than my mouse. So that's just how I've always played ever since I picked up the game originally. Someone came over to my house and literally changed the keybinds, and I just have never stopped. I do think strafing is better than turning, because with strafing, you're always actually getting somewhere. You're not just turning in a circle. Now the next set of keybinds are the following. These are the shift modifiers. Shift 1, 2, 3, 4. I have Shift 1 being a Spirit Walker's Grace, which allows me to run and cast. This is a new ability coming into Elemental Shaman's toolkit coming into in Shadowlands. Next is Shift 2. This is Sky Fury. This is where I'm putting this PvP related cooldown. Again, you can change this out if you're PvEing. You don't even need a macro for Sky Fury either. It always drops at your feet. Earthbind Totem, I have macroed this to an @cursor macro, which will get, a lot of things are actually @cursor for totems or Earthquake, but Shift 3 being Earthbind, which is actually useful, PvE, PvP. Earthquake, Shift 4. Shift E is where I'm going to be putting a Covenant ability, whether it's my Door of Shadows or whether it's my Call My Buddy for Kyrian. Or Fleshcraft. That's where I'll be putting that. Shift R will be Earth Shield. This is particularly useful in PvP, but in PvE you could potentially replace this with something else if you had a consumable or item you wanted to include. Shift F, I'm putting Hellstones there. Shift C, that's always my PvP trinket. And again, in Shadowlands, PvP trinkets will be a actual trinket you equip, so I could potentially change this if I was only PvEing to a different trinket that I'd be using on a 2 minute or or related cooldown that is a little bit longer, so it can be a little bit less convenient key binding. Shift V is where I currently have Earth Elemental placed. I used to have focused Hex here, but to be honest, Earth Ele is a necessary keybind. Next, I go to my alt modifiers. My alt modifiers, alt 1 will be Healing Stream Totem. Alt 2 will be Grounding Totem. Again, that is a PvP talent. Shift 3 being Tremor Totem, which is useful in PvE and PvP. Alt E Focus Purge, which is if I'm focusing a target, I can press this button without switching targets and purge them. Alt R being Purify Spirit, a dispel that is dispelling of curses on when you're an elemental shaman. Alt T is going to be Lightning Shield, and then Alt Q is my defensive cooldown Astral Shift. Now that's about it for the kind of my keyboard keybinds. Next up is my Corsair Scimitar. I do use this mouse. I do think it is particularly important for PvP, and the main reason for that, and I'm going to get into that right now, is because targeting is such a big deal in PvP. How do you target your enemy? You probably have an add-on like this, Gladius. How do you target them? Do you click them? Do you tab target? Do you have a kind of a keyboard keybind? Well, I strongly recommend that you kind of invest in a MMO mouse. Why? Because then your right hand, which is controlling the mouse, or if you're left hand, your left hand, it can control the targeting. And then your left hand can be shooting your damaging abilities out there, your casts, your melees, all that stuff, and focusing on movement. So this is pretty important to me. This was a big jump in my journey to get better and improve myself in PvP. You can go back in Legion and look at my key bindings where I was clicking targets. The comments were freaking grilling me, so I eventually migrated to this thanks to Tiber and some others. But how I use it and why I've done the screenshot I've done here is I want to explain how I do it and why I think it's good for your brain to have targeting keybinds like this. So on Gladius in PvP, you'll have Arena 1, 2, 3. On your mouse, you have your first row of keybinds. 3, 2, 1. That actually aligns visually with Arena 1, 2, 3, so it actually makes it really easy to target those when you want to switch targets. So I can press the top button to target Arena 1, middle button to target the middle person in the arena, and bottom for the bottom. Makes logical sense. Now the next column of buttons is for wind shear. This is particularly important, a little bit hard to get used to, but to wind shear the Arena 1 target, to wind shear the Arena 2 target, wind shear the Arena 3. This is very important as you start to climb and get more experience in Arena PvP, especially on an Elemental Shaman. One of the best things you bring to the table is a 12-second cooldown interrupt. You can be interrupting a lot of things, particularly against comps like Mage, Warlock, where they could be spamming CC, or they could be spamming huge damaging abilities. You have to decide, and you might have to, you could potentially have a devastating cast on all 3 of your targets. Mind Games going out on a Disc Priest, Polymorph going out from the Mage, and Chaos Bolt going from the Warlock. Now, of course, you could just use Grounding Totem, but what you want to be able to do is choose which one very quickly. If you had to switch targets and then shear, it would be kind of it would be delayed. You want that on-demand, very quick interrupt, and this is how you do it. So that is the second column. The third column is about targeting your friends. This is something that's a little less important, and personally, I think this is up to the player's preference. I do see people even at the top tier clicking their party's frames whenever they need to heal. But again, I do think using your mouse for only your camera movements and targeting is probably the pinnacle that you want to try to strive for. And in this case, you could target your, in this case, Party 1, Party 2, and myself is on the third column. And when I get to the resto keybinds, you'll see how that looks. That will be different because those are the 3 targets you have to be switching between all the time for healing. So I've shifted that up. But for Ele, a little bit less important, but still, rather could be a pretty big deal. Now let's go ahead and jump into the macros. The most important Ele macros I've led with up here. Number 1, starting at the top left, Flame Shock Mouse Over. This is one where you don't need to switch targets to actually apply the Flame Shock. You can actually just highlight your mouse over the nameplate of the mob you want to apply Flame Shock to, and then press the Flame Shock macro. This was actually pretty awesome. It makes it so you have to do less clicks, and that's what a lot of these macros are about. They're about stop doing so many clicks. You will have less clicking, you'll have more just using your mouse cursor and then pressing the ability. We'll get into more of those with the @ cursors, but next, but that's the Flame Shock one. Earthquake at cursor, very big deal. You want to be able to dump those earthquakes as soon as you get the Maelstrom ready for it. You don't want to have a delay of click, click. You're removing 2 clicks from the necessary number of clicks to get that earthquake out. So that's definitely a very important one, especially for AoE Elemental Shaman. Next up at the bottom left is Earth Ele Special Defensive. This one's a big deal for PvP because Elemental Shaman, unlike any other Shaman spec, have 2 defensive cooldowns potentially. One is from just Astral Shift. The second is from the Earth Elemental when you go Primal Elementalist. When you go Primal Elementalist, your Earth Elemental has a certain skill. That skill is called Harden Skin. When you use this, it's another basically equivalent of Astral Shift, and you want to use that. You want to use that every game. You need to be rotating those defensives. Now, obviously, this is on a 5-minute one versus your 1.5-minute one that's Astral Shift, but it's still very critically important. And if you have your Earth Elemental out, you can actually use this while you're in a stun, which is a huge deal. Enhanced Shaman wish they had this. Now, the next one on the far right is the Fire or Storm Elemental ability. This is the special offensive ability. Number 1, the first rows are casting the Elemental. The second one is using Call Lightning, which is specific to Storm Ele. And then the third casts are for their special abilities. Buffing them, dumping those out, Meteor or Eye of Storm. So this is how you control your elemental and then actually use that ability. You don't want to be using, you don't want to be clicking those abilities. You don't really want to be using the default control keybinds. It's kind of clumsy to do so. So those are the key ones, I think, from an offensive and quality of life standpoint. We'll go over some more cursor ones, but these are really the key ones, especially including some PvP ones. Now, the at cursor macros, like I mentioned, are particularly important. They go across all Shaman specs, and to be honest with you, they remove the delays from these events happening. If you want to slow someone, drop an Earthbind with 1 press. Don't drop an Earthbind through clicking the button and then clicking your mouse, right? That's too long. You want it to just be on the press of the keybind. Now, again, at cursor works for Earthbind, Capacitor, Earthquake for Ele, and then other things for Resto, and even your Vesper Totem from Kyrian. So these are definitely important to use and will make it feel a lot more responsive when playing a Shaman in general. You'll see these in my other Shaman guides for Enhance and Resto, but these are particularly important. Now, the focus macros I think are still good, but I really think in PvE the only one that is important is Focus Wind Shear. The others could potentially go away. Focus Purge could be useful, but in PvP these can, as long as you have the keybinds and you're comfortable with it, you can use these. If you're using the switching targeting macros that I've talked about before in your mouse, I don't think it's as important, but Focus Purge, particularly for Holy Paladin against a Disc Priest, can be extremely powerful. Now, lastly, PvP macros. We've talked about these targeting ones. We've talked about targeting your party. We've also talked about the Wind Shear, so I won't spend too much time here. But again, I just want to stress that decreasing the time it takes you to switch to different arena targets or party targets is a very big deal. But more importantly, the fluidness of doing so. If you have to click, you are taking your eye off the ball. You are taking your eye away from what is going on in the arena and you're focusing on clicking. You don't want to ever do that. That's one of the big shifts that you have to make if you want to start getting better at arena, in my opinion. Now, lastly, the only other PvP ones that you can use are Cleanse macros. This is where you could use your Curse Dispel on a friendly target, either through /cast target equals the player name or /cast target equals party 1 and party 2. I personally use target equals player name, so I don't have to think about who's party 1, who's party 2. This is obviously for an arena situation, but I think it's a very big deal. That way you don't have to think, that way you don't have to switch targets, you just press the button and you know they get dispelled. The other thing is for Earth Shield putting on a friendly target. Depending on how powerful Earth Shield's going to be, this macro is going to be particularly important in Shadowlands, especially for all classes of Shaman, especially in PvP. Applying the Earth Shield to the friendly target taking the hits is going to be a big, big deal, especially if you're going that legendary. Now, lastly, the Healing Surge, Healing Teammates. Really, I think this is really key for Enhance more than anyone else because it will be an instant cast. It becomes extremely important, again, to not have to switch targets, but to just press those healing buttons to save your teammates. So, with that being said, guys, those are the macros and those are the keybinds that I use for an Elemental Shaman. If you have any questions for me, make sure to come by the stream, twitch.tv/tickle at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I really appreciate all the love. And if you did like this video, definitely throw it a like and throw a sub in there. We're going for 50K subs in the beginning of Shadowlands. I know there's still 75% of you out there. So with that being said, I did particularly try to talk slower this video because of the comments in the comments section of my videos. I hope this pace of talking is better. I will continue to try to up my performance and up the quality of these videos for you. Keep giving me that constructive criticism and I will keep improving. I will see you in the next video. Make sure to look down below for Enhance and Resto, and we will see you in the next one. Take care.